Hey, you ready to dive into this?
Hey everyone, today we're taking a deep dive into the world of independent music with a songwriter who really embodies that spirit.
David Jarrod. And I'm really interested to see what we find out today.
Absolutely. And what I really like is that we've got all these different sources highlighting different aspects of his career.
So, 6 years old, picks up a guitar. By 11, he's playing piano.
Okay.
I mean, that's not just, a kid messing around.
Yeah.
What does that say to you about his mindset, even at that age?
I think it speaks to passion, wouldn't you say? I mean, to have that kind of dedication that young, to be putting in the hours to learn instruments. And clearly, it wasn't just a phase for young David. Think about this. He forms a band called Music with Meaning. I mean, come on. You can practically hear the teenage earnestness, but also this drive to do something real with his music.
It really makes you wonder, what did young David envision back then? Did he see the bigger picture, even back when he was just starting out? I mean, music with meaning. Does that early ambition line up with what you already know about his music?
It's a great question, and to answer it, we have to look at those early songs he was putting out. You dug up some gems, by the way. Dreams Live On, Never Walk Away, even just those titles. They hint at something, don't they? This drive, this persistence, maybe even a touch of defiance. Don't forget, he's doing all of this while independently producing his music in Blackpool.
Blackpool. No fancy studios, just raw talent and that fire in his belly. And you're right, those song titles, they're almost eerie in hindsight when you consider his journey. Talk about a self-starter. But then things change. Fast forward to 2009. Picture this. Dave is on a plane. He's headed to America. He's landed a deal with New Liberty Records to record a full album. I mean, wow, right. What are your initial thoughts on a move that bold?
It screams talent, and not just that, but a willingness to take a risk, to bet on himself. New Liberty Records back then, they weren't signing just anybody. They must have seen something truly special in his music, something that made them go, this is it. And for David to seize that opportunity, to fly across the ocean and pour his heart into a full album, that says a lot about his ambition, his self-belief.
It really makes you think, what was going through his head at that time,
Hmm.
right? Was it purely ambition, a leap of faith, or maybe a bit of both? What do you think? Was this a turning point for him?
It's definitely a defining moment, that's for sure. And what's interesting is even though New Liberty Records, they eventually transformed, became something totally different, that experience, it really seemed to leave its mark on him.
Completely. They evolved into One Groovy Planet, this whole online community for artists. And guess who's right there with them? David. It's like they formed this bond that goes way beyond a typical artist-label relationship.
Especially when you consider Thomas and Linda King, the founders. They practically call him family. There's this quote from them, David will always be part of the royal family on one groovy planet. That's not just business talk. You don't see that kind of connection very often in this industry.
It's true, there's a real sense of loyalty there, a shared history that comes through in everything from that era. And speaking of loyalty and connection, we can't forget about Holding On, this song. It seems deeply personal to him, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Holding On isn't just another track on the album. In interviews, he talks about it being this direct response to everything that was going on in the world at that time, a way of finding hope in the midst of all this darkness and uncertainty. You can hear it in the music, that rawness, that vulnerability.
And then there's the story of the actual recording session. They catch this unexplained sound, purely by chance. Now, most producers would hit delete and move on, right? Not David and his team. They kept it. Have you ever heard anything like it? It sends chills down your spine every time you listen.
It's amazing, isn't it? Sometimes those happy accidents, they can completely elevate a recording. Whether they meant to do it or not, that sound adds this whole other layer to an already incredibly powerful song. Makes you think.
Put yourself in that room, you're listening back, and boom, this unexplained sound. What do? Try to recreate it, pretend it never happened, or keep it as this haunting mystery?
It's a real testament to trusting your instincts, to going with your gut, and it paid off. But it's important to remember, Holding On isn't the only time you see that collaborative spirit. There's even a story about a request for a country song that came out of nowhere.
Yeah. And speaking of collaborations, we got to talk about that rockumentary footage. It's incredible. This isn't just the final product. We see David signing with New Liberty, those first meetings. It's like we're getting a behind-the-scenes look at how it all came together.
Like you're stepping back in time, right? And you know what makes it even better?
Mhm.
His brother was the one who actually came up with the idea for those rockumentary pieces. Just adds another layer to the whole thing, doesn't
It
it?
really does. It's a family affair. And, it's nice to be reminded that at the end of the day, the music industry, it's about people who are passionate about music, working together, creating something special. And the fact that those rockumentaries are still going strong on One Groovy Planet after all these years, that speaks volumes. What is it about his music that connects with people like that, across genres even?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's interesting you mentioned genres because that's another thing that I find so fascinating about his story. You see him moving between these different styles effortlessly. Those earlier songs, those heartfelt ballads, to the more rock-influenced stuff with New Liberty. And then he even tries his hand at country.
Don't forget that request. Someone
Yeah.
heard his music and was like, this guy, he needs to write a country song. Imagine being able to jump between genres like that. It's incredible. It speaks to real versatility.
Absolutely. It does. It makes you wonder, was he always like that?
Those early years weren't just practice, they were essential. He was like this musical sponge, soaking it all up. No limits, no expectations, just pure creativity.
Exactly. Which brings me to something else that I think is really interesting. How the music industry itself changed during his career. Think about it. He starts out making everything himself. Back then, that was no easy feat. Totally different ballgame. And now he's part of this online community with One Groovy Planet. What a journey. He's like a living timeline of the music industry, from DIY recording setups to huge studios and now the digital age. And through it all, one thing remains constant. He's always stayed true to himself. Never chasing trends, never selling out. You're right, you can hear it in every note. You can tell he's pouring his heart and soul into it. And speaking of pouring his heart into it, we have to circle back to Holding On for a minute. It's not just about that mysterious sound, it's the lyrics, too. It's how he delivers them. Powerful stuff.
Hauntingly beautiful.
It's important to remember the context, too. He wasn't writing in a bubble. The world was a pretty intense place back then. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear.
It's a powerful reminder of what music can do, isn't it? But when you zoom out, look at his career as a whole. Holding On is just one piece of a much bigger, more complex puzzle.
Right.
It's like, where do you even begin to sum it all up? It's those independent years, then that huge leap with New Liberty, and now this whole new chapter with One Groovy Planet, and then all the collaborations woven throughout. It's a lot to process. What's the thread that connects it all?
That's what I love about these deep dives. We uncover all of these details, but it's like each answer leads to even more questions. With David, it seems like it's his growth as an artist, but without ever losing sight of who he is,
It's true. You don't see that very often. Whether he's playing for a small crowd or in a recording studio, laying down tracks for thousands of people to hear, you get this sense that it's the same guy pouring his heart out. What do you think keeps a musician so grounded?
That's a question for a whole other deep dive. But with David, I keep coming back to that name he chose all those years ago. Music with meaning. Even as his sound changes, as he tries new things, collaborates with different people, that core purpose, it's always there.
It makes you think about what success really means in the music world, It's not always about awards or playing sold-out stadiums. Maybe sometimes it's about staying true to yourself, finding your people, and creating something that truly resonates. And David Jarrod, he seems to have done just that.
He has, which begs the question, what's he working on now? Is he back in the studio? Maybe he's off collaborating with someone completely unexpected. Or maybe, just maybe, he's rediscovering that magic of those early days back in Blackpool, creating something totally new. Who knows?
That's the beauty of it all. You've sent us on an amazing journey. We've gone from those early days all the way to this thriving online community, uncovered those hidden connections. Who knows, you might have even found your new favorite song along the way.
And maybe, just maybe, this is only the beginning. Somewhere out there, David's writing his next masterpiece. A song that will capture this moment, these feelings, connect with people just as powerfully as Holding On. Wouldn't that be something?
Makes you want to cue up his entire discography, right? And hey, who knows? Maybe David Jarrod will be the subject of our next deep dive. Until then, thanks for diving in with us.
I'm David Jarrod. I'm here in the USA, shooting a video. I'm recording the debut album with New Liberty Records. They've got me out at 10:10 at night in the freezing cold with the snow. I mean, my goodness me. It's at least the whole of my fingers thick in snow. It's minus God knows what, and we're shooting a music video. Let's rock and roll!